Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this session. I'm joined by always by my colleague Sunil. I'm Daniel Gilby, account manager here at Xcession. Sunil, if you'd like to say a few quick words, please.
Thank you, Dan. Yep, Sunil Dougal, CRO of Xcession, and we're joined by a customer today.
Yes, indeed. Really pleased to be joined today by Richard Jebb of Hyde Park Solutions. Richard, welcome. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your schedule to speak with us. Richard,
yes,
if you'd just like to... Thanks. Sorry to cut across you there, but if you'd maybe just give us a quick intro to yourself for the audience. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Richard Jebb. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Hyde Park Solutions. We're a UK company, an Oracle partner specializing in the Primavera suite of products, which are to do with portfolio program and project management and project execution. The company's been going since 2008, and I joined in 2016 when the business I ran was acquired by Hyde Park, and I've been with them ever since, sort of running the technical side of the company.
Fantastic. Thank you, Richard. And I suppose just for the audience's sake, the reason why we know Richard and we know Hyde Park Solutions is because some time ago you decided that actually from a service management point of view, you could look at other tool sets and perhaps seek to gain some additional functionality, and did some research in the market which led you to Xcession. Could you tell us a little bit about that and the kind of thinking and rationales that sort of sat behind that and a bit of the process perhaps?
Sure. So when I joined Hyde Park, they were very much a consultancy focused organization. That's how they saw themselves. And they didn't really have any sort of ticketing system that was designed as such. Somebody had written a tool that sort of logged issues on projects internally, but it really wasn't fit for purpose. So we went through an exercise as we were in the middle of a large project of trying to find something very quickly. This was sort of 2016, 2017, and came across a cloud-based solution that seemed to do what we wanted to do at the time. And that was adopted. And then since then, we've grown as an organization. We've taken on other companies through acquisition. And more importantly, we've been down the journey of becoming certified for ISO 9001 and ISO 27001. That imposes a fair degree of process on an organization, and it's the whole point of it. And we'd also hired some people with experience of the ITIL methodology for service management, change management, and so on. And although the tool we had at the time could do some of that, it transpired that it was utterly unable to do any of the sort of asset management and configuration database management that we needed really to support the ISO 27001 activities that we were getting into. So I decided to go out to the market again and try and identify a tool that better suited the way the business was operating. And it became clear there were a lot of tools out there, some of them much more focused on people running data centers, for example, where you need very much a sort of low-level nitty-gritty configuration of which network interface talks to which subnet, talks to which network card, and so on. And that really wasn't what we needed. We needed something that was a degree of complexity suitable for a sort of 30 to 50 person company, rather than a sort of large organization. But it needed to be customizable to do things the way we wanted. It needed to be able to support multiple customers as well as deal with our own internal tickets, and more importantly, it also needed to do all the asset management, configuration management, and asset discovery, because by the time you get up to 30 to 50 people with all their laptops and so on, and all the servers we've got in-house, plus our Azure, you don't want to be adding new software packages or machines by hand, because that just becomes a futile exercise. So I did some basically Googling around, eliminated some of the many options that were out there, and then purely by chance and good fortune came across Xcession.
Or excellent marketing on our behalf.
I think actually what it was one of the products that we looked at, iTop. I think you're listed as a reseller for the UK. And so I then discovered when I went to your website through your excellent marketing that you also dealt with several other products. And as a reseller, we tend to view ourselves as sort of more independent minded than, you know, if you bought the product from the vendor's going to shove the vendor's products down your throat. Whereas if you are a reseller, you at least can offer an objective opinion as to the suitability of products. And it seemed to us that actually engaging with you guys would give us an opportunity to get an informed opinion on the suitability of not just one, but potentially several appropriate products for us. So it was a bit of a win. That's how we ended up talking to you. I don't know if you want to sort of fill out what happened next, or let me keep talking.
I was just going to sort of summarize kind of the positioning there, Richard, if that's okay. So you joined the company. The company's Hyde Park Solutions has experienced expansion, experienced growth, and by extension, areas of complexity within the organization, and possibly, you know, the services you provide onwards to your client base. That then prompted a necessity to have a more, let's call it a more robust, capable tool, to the points you made about it needs to be able to do certain things, you know, be configurable and be able to be shaped to your needs and your will to a degree. And you recognized that what you currently had wasn't quite up to scratch, or didn't, you know, you'd be really...
Yeah, it was actually, we discovered it was going end of life as well.
As well, right? So there's that into the mix. Yeah. Okay. So that all of those levers then really kind of point you to, okay, well, we need something. And it's something that's quite classic, isn't it? As an organization grows and expands, you need more tooling, or, you know, you need a more capable tool set. So would that be a fair kind of summary?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, so Sunil, you know, I know you engaged initially with Richard and the Hyde Park team from first contact. Anything you'd like to interject with at that point?
Well, only to echo that the marketplace for ITSM tooling is incredibly oversubscribed. Is probably not the right word, because actually, you know, there's a huge amount of demand, but you know, there are many tools which at face value do the same sort of things, and it is difficult as a customer, I would think, to differentiate easily between the tools that are out there in the marketplace sometimes. And you know, the purchase and successful implementation and then run and operate of a tool, it, you know, involves more than just the capability that the tool set has, doesn't it? It involves, you know, the licensing model, and is that fit for your current organization and fit for growth, the way in which that product is delivered, you know, SaaS or on-prem, although not many, I think, are buying on-prem now. You know, what is the support and maintenance of the product like? What is the vendor like at actually delivering upgrades or new features and capabilities? You know, is the implementation 10 days or 100 days? You know, there's all these sorts of other factors that come into play. And actually, as a customer, it's very difficult, isn't it, to know that?
It's a very serious commitment
Yeah.
to evaluate one piece of software. If it looks like you're going to have to evaluate 4 or 5, especially when, you know, these days most companies try and throw the entire process back on the customer and say, oh yes, you can sign up for a 60-day free evaluation. If you haven't actually got any detailed information that would allow you to, you know, or the experience of the product, it's a slight chicken and egg situation. You know, it's great people will let you play with their tool for 60 days, but if you don't actually know what you've got or quite how it works, because the online web documentation refers to a version previous and isn't quite correct, for example, then it's a bit of a frustrating process. So again, having somebody like yourselves, we were able to involve in the process and pick your brains, was really, really useful.
And I think we showed you 3 or 4. I think obviously iTop was it 3? Was it 3?
It was 3, I think, in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, you do service now, but I think we rapidly realised that was just a sort of enormous, I was going to say sledgehammer, but more of a sort of 700-ton press to crack a relatively small nut. So yeah, we didn't need that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first one we looked at was iTop.
Yes.
And mostly that was focused on the asset management side of things, which it did pretty well. And it produces nice, pretty pictures. The sort of asset relationship diagrams are very pretty. The user interface is a little bit rough and ready. It's a slight concern, but I think the thing that killed that off ultimately was that their licensing model meant we were going to have to pay quite a lot to get the full ITIL sort of change release cycle functionality.
Yeah, so unusually it's not a per seat model. It's a supported model at different levels because it is an open source solution, and there's a tipping point as to when that becomes you know, attractive commercially, and you probably have enough users to get to that tipping point.
So Richard, and not to put words in your mouth here, right? But during, you know, you've mentioned kind of having somebody like Xcession to be able to share the burden, if you want to call it that, of the selection process and then provide an informed, impartial viewpoint. You know, you'd highlighted iTop, and at face value, again, it looked like it might be a good fit. You saw then that Xcession were one of the partners in the UK that you could speak to. And then through the engagement with ourselves, I think it would be fair to state that, you know, we sought to then glean some information. Well, look, what do you want to achieve? What are you looking for in terms of benefits?
Yeah, sure.
Because that then helps us come back to you with the suggestions that we ultimately did, and kind of step through those options with you. Could you talk a little bit about that and how you sort of felt that process went, how you found the process?
Well, I mean, it went, I think, very well. It was very, very useful to us. So we started off with a product that, you know, iTop is pretty approachable. It's pretty easy to understand. But we had, you know, the commercial licensing side of things didn't seem to work out. And it was at that stage, you know, we had explained in the course of looking at iTop with you some, you know, our requirements in some detail. My colleague Tina, who obviously isn't on the call, but was heavily our support manager, head of support, was obviously very interested in the the capabilities of any future product to support the ticket handling process, the workflows we'd got in place, sort of in general and more specifically for some of our more important customers. And we covered all this off with you. And when it became clear that iTop was not the answer, you then proposed, I'm trying to remember what it was called, it begins with a 4, I think.
For me.
That's it, for me.
Yeah.
And again, reading the product literature online, it looked like that was going to do the job as well. And we embarked on another focused evaluation of that. And I'm trying to remember exactly where we got with that, but I think the problem was the way that they handled reporting. There's a lot of functionality. It seems to be updated very regularly, but when it comes to reporting, you get what you get, and there isn't really a lot, frankly, from memory in the product, and it looked like we were going to have to spend an awfully long time extracting data out of the new system and then reworking it in Power BI or Excel or whatever to produce the sort of reports that our customers are used to seeing in their monthly support reviews. And that seemed, that was a retrograde step. Well, it certainly wasn't an improvement on the situation that we were in, where we were having to do that anyway. And one of the things we were looking at, tool which eliminated a lot of the manual processing. So I think that's, from recollection, I think that's where we ended up with, for me. So we then moved on to Freshservice, which is where we ended up, purchasing. But it was valuable going through that process with you, and being able to focus on areas where I think it was you said, Sunil, that the reporting in for me, is a bit take it or leave it. So we looked very carefully at that. And
just to sort of round out on that, the for me reporting model, and Sunil, correct me if I'm misunderstanding this here, is that there are out-of-the-box reports and they're adding to those all of the time. However, being able to build custom reports is a feature that's limited within the platform. Although, should a client want a report at a future point, they then they put that into their product backlog and would introduce it based on demand, right? So, but Richard, not to absolutely valid. I recall that at the time. And to your point, it was
and maybe next year or or already since we looked at it, that stuff may be in there, but it just wasn't right for us at that time.
No, and indeed, and again, I think it would be a fair observation to make that it's valuable to look at products so that you can say, well, we know we've looked at the market, we're making, rather than just saying, yep, that's the one for us, and going in not blind, but to the other solution sets that are out there. You're getting that informed or more informed process behind things. So you can say, well, we did look at others. They didn't work for us based on X, Y, and Z criteria. However, we have found one that meets the needs that we have now. Not just now as well, though, because you're having a future-looking view there, given that the Hyde Park Solutions is continuing to grow, and so on. So what's going to be right for you down the track as well? I'm, again, not putting words in your mouth.
No, I know, but that's entirely right. We're trying to build a framework of systems to support the business, over the next few years, and we'd outgrown our service management tool. So part of it was to make sure that we had something that was scalable, that could be tuned in different ways in the future if necessary to provide additional functionality. There are certainly areas that we haven't looked at yet, and areas that we wish to develop further, particularly handling sort of internal service tickets and routing those. We're just about to start doing that in the next month or so. Yeah, it's been a very, very useful exercise, and also being able to say to the budget holder, you know, here is a spreadsheet showing the evaluation of several systems that we've conducted over the last 6 months or whatever, showing why we've decided on this one, and also here is the discount that the helpful reseller has negotiated on our part, which again is something that as a reseller I appreciate. You know, we do it for our customers as well. Oracle aren't always pleased when we're in the mix, because yeah, we work for our customers rather than for Oracle.
Yeah, absolutely. So Richard, we've done the evaluation. You've made the tool selection. Now comes the challenging part, moving from one to other. Can you talk us through kind of your experience with the transition? I know that was sort of earlier this year. Share any kind of insights?
So I mean, I'm to some extent passing comment as an interested observer here, because Tina and Frank were the ones who were sort of knee deep in the configuration with Mark and Ollie. So it seemed to go in fits and starts. But I think that's always the way of these things. You make some progress, then you come across something you suddenly realized is a bit of a challenge, and then you spend a few days trying to figure out how you work past it, and then you move on. And I think there were sort of 2 or 3 occasions where we hit a slight bump in the road and had to figure out a way past, but it all went, you know, as smoothly as it was likely to. I think it's probably the best way of describing it. It wasn't plain sailing, and you know, one of the things behind that is that I think, if I'm right, Freshservice only has 4 priorities built into it, and we've always used 5. So we had to sort of put in a custom field for the HPS ticket priority, and then build workflows around that rather than the standard one, which we have to ignore. But apart from that, I don't think there was anything that was a real sticking point. It all went pretty smoothly. It was delivered on time. Any sort of subsequent little issues that cropped up got dealt with, and people now have got the sort of exposure to working with workflows and confidence to actually tweak them. So, you know, that seems to have all gone as intended, which is obviously good.
And how about the sort of asset config management piece, which I think is on its way?
I'd say we're pretty well there, actually.
Okay.
So again, we ran into 1 or 2 issues. You know, we were obviously interested in Freshservice because it has this series of connectors to other things like Microsoft Intune or other pieces of ServiceNow and so on. It turned out that the Intune connector, they've given up. I can't remember whether it's one that Fresh wrote themselves or was a third party, but it no longer imports software inventories from devices that it's connected to. So we had to sort of switch to using the agent. I think we're now going to switch back to using the Freshservice Discovery Probe, because that's been enhanced very recently to pull in a whole load of other stuff. So it's still settling down, but we can see where we're headed with it, and it's delivering value. We've still got to do some work around software and sort of we used to have a sort of manually managed approved software list that we then check what was on systems against that in a semi-automated fashion. That's now, the idea is that the automated discovery of software on servers and end user devices populates the asset inventory, and then we can take a view on what should be there and what shouldn't be there. So that whole side of things has improved and changed, and we need to reflect that in some of the process documentation for ISO that we get audited against. But no, it is, we've got all the information asset data that was part of our ISO 27001 system. Again, in an Excel spreadsheet, we set up custom fields, custom asset types, exported those from Excel, brought them into Freshservice, which was a pretty straightforward operation, I have to say, and built relationships between them so that we can sort of see if a particular software environment within the company sort of stops working. You can now have a look at a picture that shows you all the different system components that feed into that, and which might be contributing to it not working. So that's exactly the sort of information we wanted to be able to get hold of from the system, and it can clearly do it. I think there's a bit more fine tuning and fiddling to do, but it's broadly speaking there. Very
good. And Richard, could you tell us maybe about some of the other benefits that you've experienced, you've seen, you've had since kind of moving to the Freshservice platform?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one of them, which sounds a bit trivial, but probably isn't, is that we've had feedback from several customers saying how much more they like the web portal that they use compared to the old one. So there is a bit more functionality there, and it looks a great deal slicker with the sort of options for branding and so on. So that enhances our public face, I guess, from a customer perspective. The reporting, I think Tina is having to do considerably less fiddling around with Excel than she did before. She and Frank have been discovering how to develop reports themselves, and that seems to be going okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of other things directly. We've got a steady flow of tickets coming in from customers. Our IT manager, Steve, is logging internal tickets using the system yet, but we haven't opened that up for other people within, staff members to raise issues or service requests through the tool. But that's, as I said earlier, that's coming fairly soon. Yeah, I mean, it's allowed us in that respect to take greater control over our internal ticket management, which previously was all done by an external IT provider. Since Steve joined us at the beginning of, or just before the beginning of the year, we've actually, excuse me, we've actually been sort of divesting them of things to do for us. And we're moving over to a new provider who's effectively going to be just there as a backup, but obviously will be able to, get tickets from us should they need to see them. Yeah, and also the knowledge base side of it, actually thinking about it.
Okay.
We've been building out knowledge base stuff, and the ability to develop knowledge base articles that are specific to a client. That's actually being used now, so that there are guidance documents we've produced for specific customers that they can access through the web portal, which other customers can't see. So it's specific to their environment. So that's been useful as well.
So an enhanced public presence. That's obviously great.
Yeah.
And I think the key one here is less fiddling around with Excel. I mean,
yeah,
that's the dream, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And the automated discovery.
Right.
Actually having it picking up software as people install it on systems. We haven't fully sort of figured out what to do with the data in terms of presenting it in reports, but it's good to see it. It's good to see it there and know that it's up to date.
Yeah.
And I think then as the journey continues, there's going to be more things come out of it as everybody really solidifies that familiarity with the tool set and the capabilities underneath. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be more to come in that respect. Richard, I'm conscious of the time, conscious of your time. Just in terms of perhaps some closing comments, if you were to, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but if you were to put together in a sentence or two, kind of the overall experience of working with Xcession on this transition, how would you perhaps best sum that up?
It's been very professional and trouble-free, which is, that's all you can expect for, really. Yeah,
that's good.
It's been a pleasure working with you, and hopefully we'll stay talking for some considerable time into the future.
Absolutely. Richard, all right, well, thank you again for your time. Sunil, anything from you just before we close out the session?
No, only to say thank you, Richard. It's so valuable to to get thoughts like this, and I think anyone else out there in a similar situation, hopefully there's something for them to learn from your experiences as well. So thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, thanks very much to the audience, and see you again soon.
Thank you.